Well, greetings and salutations, Series 7 test takers, coming to you Friday. Hope you're one of those test taking weekend warriors. This is the Series 7 Guru coming to you from my studio here in fabulous Las Vegas with an explication request. So, a customer sells one BFD August 25 put at 1.5. Again, everything, my channel, these explications, a buffet. Take what you like, leave what you don't. But what I really believe in is if you can understand things, if you intellectually own something, you won't have to memorize a bunch of stuff. If you go down the memory road, the stuff you're going to have to memorize is going to continue to compound. And if you can know contract specifications, in other words, you're not struggling that when the customer sells that put, that they have an obligation to buy the stock at the strike price. What I've created here is an obligation to buy the stock at 25. And for that, I got a 1.5. I like to think of people who are sell or who are short or the writer of an option as a potential victim, being that if this gets exercised, I'm going to be buying the stock at 25 and the stock is somewhere lower than that. Now, I did get a 1.5 point cushion. So if you get good on contract specifications, and again, I would literally write this underneath the, my practice problems each and every time, whether it's a choice or an obligation. Remember, I have two types of contracts. Buy or sell them for basic positions. So I call that contract specifications. And then if you can track money. So now if you're one of my test taking students, fire up the T. If we want to be able to track money, as I said, if we can track money in and out of the account. Now, I like to use dollars out, dollars in. Some people like to use debit or credit. Some people like to use minus and pluses, whatever floats your boat in terms of tracking this money. I always believe in tracking money on a per share basis. And then when I'm all done, figure out what's going on. So in every thing, we fire up a T. I call this the initial setup. So our initial setup looks like this. We brought in a 1.5 for agreeing to buy the stock at 25. It then tells us the put is exercised. So that's why contract specifications are so important. So contract specifications, we say, okay, well, if this thing gets exercised, what that means is I'm gonna have to buy the stock at 25. Again, I do suggest you put your things on different lines in your T's so that it makes the offset a little more transparent to you. In other words, I wouldn't put the 25 across from the 1.5 because who knows, maybe we're going to close out the option, whatever's going to happen here. Okay, so I've done what the question says. The put is exercised with the stock at 24. Again, you need to know that means I'm paying 25. It says I sell the stock. So I'm selling the stock I just bought at 25 for 24. What is the profit or loss? Well, it looks like I'm still going to be able to make a 0.5 point. I have a 0.5 point more in than out, so I have a $50 gain here. And again, if you wanted, instead of doing it this way, you could have got your break even, which is 25 minus 1.5, got your break even at 23.5, and known this is a bullish strategy. And 24 is a 0.5 point ahead of that. I personally, memorizing break evens for the basics, I think is okay. I mean, however you get right answers, nobody really cares. However, if things get a little more complicated, covered calls, protective puts, straddles, or spreads, if you go down the memory road, as I mentioned, you're going to have to memorize a lot more stuff. Whereas you know contract specifications, and then here's our contract, right? If you know contract specifications and you can track money, you're in pretty good shape. Now, in this question, they said the contract was exercised. Now, be careful. I'm not asking what can happen to this customer. What can happen to that contract is this contract can be traded. That's the T. Good way to remember this. T can be traded. In this question, the contract was not traded. In this situation, we did an opening sale. We did not do a closing purchase here. We could have. They could have said you close it out at intrinsic value, for example. The contract can be exercised. And that's what happened here. So, most all these time clock questions, I call them, end with this contract being traded, the contract being exercised. Now, in the exam, I'm under no obligation to tell you whether this contract got exercised or not, because you should know that if at expiration the contract has intrinsic value, the contract will be exercised, right? So if at expiration the stock is 24, the customer is going to get put the stock at 25. Now, here it works out because it's a 1.5. By the way, that is also, we don't hear from you, we'll do it for you. In your option agreement, there's limited discretion for that. Now, the ideal situation here would be this contract expires. If the stock is 25 or higher and the contract expires worthless, we would have made a 1.5. We would have kept the money. We get to go neener, neener, neener. So that would be the ideal situation. The ideal situation when you sell an option contract is the contract expires worthless and you keep the money. You agree to be a potential victim, either delivering the stock at the strike price, short call, or buying the stock at the strike price, short put. Nobody makes you perform. Contract expires, you keep the money. You probably should know this is bullish, but again, I think that plays out with the T, but this is a bullish transaction. Okay, so I hope you found that helpful. I have a couple more requests here going into the weekend, so I'll dole them out as we get them done. Remember, inch by inch, your exam is a cinch, and yard by yard, your exam is hard. And I will see you for the next explication request.